I mean, July is already over and summer feels like it's coming to an end. And unfortunately, this month I have only seen three new July releases, but fortunately, they were all pretty good, and I'm going to rank them from the worst to the best. And coming in last place, we have Beverly Hills Cop Axel F. And I think this is still a pretty solid movie. And I think that's one of the great things about this month is the three movies that I did see were all pretty good. And I think, like, with this movie, it's good. I mean, of course, Eddie Murphy is fantastic. He's hilarious as ever. But it's more just feels like it's just kind of more of the same. And because I wouldn't really say that Eddie Murphy hasn't skipped a beat. Like, you could clearly tell, like, he's just not as, like, the jokes aren't, he just doesn't have that as much comedic timing as he did in those original movies. Even though this movie is still pretty decent, and this movie is pretty funny at sometimes, it just doesn't really hold up in comparison to, like, the original, for example. But it's still solid. I think that if you watch this movie, you're still going to have a pretty solid time. Coming in second place, we have Twisters, and this was a movie that I have not seen the first one, but I went to go see this movie just wanting to have a fun time, and I did. I think that this movie is a very fun time. And I think that one thing that this movie does very well is, although it's a typical disaster movie, I think that it does a really good job of showing this sense of community, as after there is, like, this disaster, it shows how people are just so natural to help out each other. And it just kind of all makes it just a little bit better to watch because you see these terrifying twisters, but it kind of, like, just gives that great feeling that, you know, these people are still care about each other. You know, like, still going to watch out for each other. And so you get this amazingly awesome, almost terrifying at some points movie, but it still thinks that it is able to have that heart to it that I think that it needed instead of just being another generic kind of disaster movie. And Glenn Powell is in this, and he's just quickly becoming, like, this rising movie star, even though he's been around for quite a while. Like, he's just so charismatic and so much fun that you're like, you just want to see him in more stuff. And he's great in here as well. Also, the new Superman actor is in this movie too, and he's pretty good as well. Though he does play his character as, like, a really big jerk, which I think is really funny, but he did good in it, and he was pretty good. And coming in at number one is easily Longlegs. I mean, I think that some people were disappointed with this movie because when you advertise yourself as the scariest movie ever, it's like, no, it's not the scariest movie ever. It's just a really thrilling movie that just leaves you on the edge of your seat. And I think where it's much more of a detective movie where you're following Micah Monroe's character as she's tracking down the serial killer played by Nicolas Cage, who gives such a great performance. Both of them gave such great performances, both Micah and Nick. And it's just unfortunate that this movie will get completely ignored at the Oscars. And I don't think either of them will get nominations, even though I think they both deserve it. I think that they were both fantastic, and I think that both of these performances were some of the best performances of the entire year. I really do. And I think that this is the horror movie, I think, that it just has this eerie sense to it. And it just feels so unique to the horror genre, but somehow familiar. And I don't know, I don't really want to go too in depth. Like, you watch my full review for that, but it just feels like it's just got so much to it than just your average typical horror movie. And I just think that both the performances were fantastic, and just the whole atmosphere of this movie is just very engaging. So yeah, I only saw those three movies, but thankfully I enjoyed all of them. And so yeah, tell me is your ranking of all the July 2024 movies that you watched, ranked from the worst to the best. And yeah, that's my ranking.